Performing for the Queen, meeting the President, having a highly successful reality show on MTV, and releasing a solo album all in 1 year has to be one of the highlights in his career. Just to cap it all off, Ozzy would also release a live album from his performance at the Budokan in the same year, so 2002 was a great time for Ozzy, who was now about to earn recognition for his trailblazing efforts as he earned his name in the Hollywood Walk of Fame in 2002 as well. Ozzy Osbourne would also make a cameo in the Austin Powers movie Goldmember, which pokes fun at his TV show and general mannerisms.
Check it out! Those remind me of...
Boobs!
Boobs, Ozzy.
These filmmakers are just boobs.
In 2005, he would also release his 9th studio album called Undercover, which featured covers of songs originally performed by the Beatles, Mountain, King Crimson, Buffalo Springfield, and, appropriately of course, the Rolling Stones song Sympathy for the Devil. As far as the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame side was concerned, 2002 marked Black Sabbath's 4th consecutive year that the band was nominated, but they had not won, instead being on the short list since 1999. In fact, it wasn't until their 7th nomination that Black Sabbath were finally recognised and inducted into the Hall of Fame, with James Hetfield and Lars Ulrich acting as MCs for the event. 2007 would see his 10th studio record Black Rain being released, which featured tracks such as I Don't Want to Stop, Not Going Away, and Black Rain. In 2008, when the world was being exposed to the wild success of Guitar Hero, we would find Ozzy making an appearance in the series as a playable lead singer that could be unlocked and featured multiple songs from Black Sabbath and Ozzy's solo material. This is not the only time that Ozzy was featured in a video game as well, as his voice skills were also used in the 2009 game Brutal Legends, for the character of course known as Bat Dad.
Well, it's about fucking time!
And even as a playable character for 2019's mobile game WWE Champions. Ozzy would also go viral when he was interviewed by Mark Hoppus on Fuse TV in 2010 regarding his opinion on Justin Bieber, which of course he gave his famous response.
So you listen to a lot of Justin Bieber? Is that, are we gonna... Justin Bieber?
Who the fuck's Justin Bieber?
Good. I like that answer, that's perfect.
Ozzy would relive this moment in a Super Bowl ad in the following year, talking about 6G internet, and featured his wife Sharon as well as a guest appearance by Justin Bieber himself.
I'll take it from here.
Oh. Okay.
What's a 6G?
What the fuck's a Bieber?
I don't know, kinda looks like a girl.
I'm sure the same sentiment was expressed by believers around the world if they were asked who Ozzy was back in 2010. In the same year, Ozzy would also release his 11th studio album, which would be considered a commercial disappointment in sales that I'm sure had nothing to do with the new invention of streaming music. In fact, if we disregard his covers album, then Scream would be his lowest scoring album, and I guess the fans might have been right here, even though I don't mind this album. This record would see 3 singles being released, including Let Me Hear You Scream, Life Won't Wait, and Let It Die. The original title for this album was supposed to be Soul Sucker after another song off this record, but was changed after negative backlash from the fans. This album would also see Gus G replacing longtime guitarist Zakk Wylde, but it was his one and only album that Gus would play on. It also featured the debut of Adam Wakeman on keyboards, who of course is the son of Rick Wakeman from Yes fame, and would go on tour once again to support the album. But this time, there would be rumours of a big event in the works involving some of his old friends. Ozzy would reunite once again with Black Sabbath in 2011 with the original lineup, and even set the music world ablaze as news spread how the band were not only going on tour again, but how they would also hit the recording studios to write a new album. The band's first in 18 years, and their first with this lineup. This record, however, would not feature Bill Ward, whose role would be filled by Brad Wilk from Rage Against the Machine. The tour commenced in 2012, and in 2013, Black Sabbath's 19th album, named 13 for some reason, was released and was met with mixed to positive reviews. This next part was written about 3 days after Ozzy's final show, of which I believed 13 would be their last album that they would ever do. And unfortunately this has now come to pass to be true. 13 would spawn tracks such as Loner, End of the Beginning, and God Is Dead. This followed up with a consecutive tour to celebrate Black Sabbath in 2016 called The End. This was the tour that I managed to catch them on, and despite Ozzy's ongoing health issues, he put on one hell of a performance when he hit the stage, giving a very memorable performance, walking from one side to the other, clapping his hands, and of course giving his signature hand symbols, getting the crowd revved up. This tour would be a stressful time for Ozzy, however, as news of his infidelity came to light, as he had been cheating on his wife for the past 4 years with his hairstylist Michelle Foog. The news of which was broken when Sharon mentioned how they had split after 33 years while on a panel for the show called The Talk, even admitting how she tried to end her life once she found out. While doing research for these episodes, I completely forgot about this event until now, but I'm not completely surprised either. I guess I'm most surprised when these events actually occurred. Black Sabbath would end this tour on the 4th of February 2017 with their last show taking place in Birmingham, which was recorded and subsequently released onto DVDs and CDs. Ozzy and Sharon's split would also be short-lived, with the couple renewing their vows in May of the same year. By 2019, Ozzy was supposed to headline the Download Festival in Australia along with some other acts such as Slayer, who were performing their last shows, and a festival that I would attend. Unfortunately, Ozzy had to cancel this tour due to health reasons, suffering from pneumonia, and of course it restricted him to being at home. Slayer would end up headlining this event with many musicians on the bill covering Ozzy's songs in support of the legend himself. In the same year, Ozzy would return to the recording studio to begin work on his 12th studio album, Ordinary Man, which would feature guest appearances from musicians such as Elton John, Post Malone and Travis Scott, and spawned the songs Under the Graveyard, Straight to Hell, Ordinary Man, and This Is a Raid, which was inspired by true life events that I had mentioned in part 1 of this series when Ozzy thought that the house that he was staying at during the recording of Volume 4 was being raided and he snorted a plate full of cocaine to hide the evidence. The planned tour for this album would unfortunately be cancelled due to COVID once it rolled around, a time that saw Ozzy being diagnosed with this disease in 2022, sparking concern amongst his family and the fan base for his ongoing health. He would overcome the disease and would playfully thank the devil for keeping him safe during this time. But this wouldn't slow down Ozzy from recording his 13th studio album titled Patient Number 9 that would be released in 2022. I would cover this album on an episode of 5 Minute Reviews back in the day, and it is noteworthy for being the last record by not only Ozzy Osbourne, but also Jeff Beck, who performed on the title track as well as 1,000 Shades, with Jeff Beck unfortunately passing away in 2023. This record would also feature other legendary musicians such as Eric Clapton, Tony Iommi, Josh Homme, Robert Trujillo, Duff McKagan, Chad Smith, and Taylor Hawkins, in one of his last appearances on a studio album as well. This record would go on to win Ozzy a Grammy for Best Rock Album of the Year, earning his third during his lifetime. To further lament on this point, Ozzy would be inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame for a second time in 2024 on his first nomination, this time as a solo musician, with Jack Black serving as the MC for the event, joining a small list of musicians who had achieved such a status. And Ozzy himself would also be on another TV show, this time with his son Jack, as they toured around the States visiting all kinds of people. And in one instance, he even met the legendary Black Sabbath themselves, a Black Sabbath tribute band who dresses characters from McDonald's, of course realigning different lyrics to feature many of these items.
Fun is a spoof on Black Sabbath, and if you can't send them the love, don't f***ing do it.
In 2025, the music world was buzzing with activity. News was spreading that despite his ailments, Ozzy was going to come out of retirement for a final send-off, and the occasion was going to be a truly once-in-a-lifetime event, with the biggest names in metal attending and performing. It was emceed by Jason Momoa, a lifelong Sabbath fan, and featured musicians such as Andrew Watt, Billy Corgan, Chad Smith, Dave Ellefson, David Draymond, Fred Durst, Izzy Hale, Jake E. Lee, Jonathan Davis, KK Downing, Mike Borden, Papa the Fifth from Ghost, Rudy Sarzo, Sammy Hagar, Sleep Togan, Tom Morello, Vernon Reed, Ugly Kid Joe, Wolfgang Van Halen, Rival Sons, Mastodon, Anthrax, Lamb of God, Hellstorm, Alice in Chains, Gojira, Pantera, Slayer, Tool, Guns N' Roses, Metallica, and of course Black Sabbath reunited with Bill Ward, marking the first time in 15 years the original lineup had performed together. And of course, the man of the hour himself and the centre of all of it. It would take place in his hometown of Birmingham at the Villa Park Stadium. His local football team he had supported since his youth of all places and would be called back to the beginning. This star-studded lineup was insane, and the concert very quickly exhausted its 40,000 tickets despite all the bands having only a 20-minute set list. It would also be available for streaming for the duration of the entire festival. Now I'll admit, I had my reservations about this show. I mean, Ozzy was not in great shape, and he resorted to walking around with a cane. I also remembered 2 days before the show, one of the bands sent out a tweet regarding the sound rehearsals, stating that people should temper their expectations. Never a good sign. Even though it was touted as a final concert, would it be a moment where his ailments would get the better of him? Still, on the day, Ozzy gave it his all to the best of his abilities, restricted to performing from a seat for the duration of his sets, as he sat on a chair that was wheeled around in circles from the side of the stage on a turntable. And when that thing spun around to show Ozzy, the crowd lost their shit. He put in one hell of a show. And I'll admit that his vocals really blew me away from just how good they were compared to how I thought Ozzy would actually sound. This show was a massive success, and on the day roughly 9 million people would stream the concert during its runtime, with a reported peak at 5.8 million people for Ozzy's performance. The show would conclude with a minor controversy as the streaming services cut it short, with Ozzy being the one left alone on stage as the band just walked away. What was missed from the stream was the band bringing out a cake to Ozzy to show their appreciation for this performance and the achievements that they had made together. These 4 boys from Birmingham, whose lives somehow intertwined at the right time to create a genre of music that was unheard of and thus became the innovators and godfathers of the heavy metal genre. Surrounded of course by the bands, all of which owed their success due to these guys being in their lives. In fact, backstage after the show, there was a truly great moment when Ozzy's daughter Kelly Osbourne became engaged in front of her father as her boyfriend, Sid Wilson from Slipknot, popped the question after Ozzy's performance.
Kelly, you know I love you more than anything in the world.
Of course, Ozzy gave his permission, delivered with his usual style of humour.
Fuck up, you're not marrying my daughter.
The internet was in unison that the show was a wild success, which brought with it a high praise and renewed interest in Ozzy, but this would be short-lived. 17 days after his performance, Ozzy would pass on the 22nd of July. In a true twist of fate, this was also the exact same gap that Lemmy had between his last show and his passing some 10 years prior.
Mama, I'm coming home.
Now, it's easy to reflect upon Ozzy's career and oversimplify it by stating that he was not a good person, and there are certainly many stories that I've told throughout these episodes that would support this statement. Many would chalk this up to a troubled childhood, or undiagnosed medical issues, or his rampant drug use affecting his ability to make rational decisions. After all, it's just like he said in this advertisement.
I've done my share of bad things. Also, your share of bad things.
His past would be a contributing factor to his issues. However, I do believe he made up for many of his past transgressions in his later life and was certainly remorseful of a lot of his actions too. So for this section, I want to talk about the good things that Ozzy did for people. Ozzy spent his later years trying to help out others to the best of his abilities, and here is a short list of organisations that Ozzy supported or donated to. 21st Century Leaders, Children in Need, Elton John's AIDS Foundation, the Gibson Foundation, Los Angeles LGBT Center, Music Cares, Prince's Trust, Save the Children, and Starkey Hearing Foundation. It should also be noted that Ozzy's final performance had all the proceeds going to multiple services, like Cure Parkinson's, Birmingham Children's Hospital, and Acorns Children's Hospice. In total, this one night raised a reported amount of $190 million on the day, and this figure will only increase surely once it's available on streaming services or upon its physical media release. Ozzy would help any band that he met while on tour with them, speak with them directly, and ask if they needed anything changed in order to accommodate any requests they might have. He even gave wise words of wisdom to many at important crossroads in their careers. In turn, pretty much every musician would pay their respect to Ozzy upon his passing, including his former Black Sabbath bandmates, with some very heartfelt responses. There was even a tribute from Youngblood, for example, a young and up-and-coming musician who was at the event, has vowed to play a Black Sabbath song every time he hits the stage for the rest of his life. There was even a tribute from Justin Bieber, who provided his photo from the advertisement he was in alongside Ozzy when he heard of the news. But not so much from Roger Waters, who instead has made some dubious comments that even got Jack Osbourne riled up. Fans would make shrines to Ozzy all over the world, from his Hollywood Square to his hometown of Birmingham, in a truly solidifying moment in music and the sadness that we all feel in his absence. Ozzy was extremely catering to all musicians he encountered, always offering help, and always offering praise that would always benefit these musicians in their career. And many musicians have stated in interviews how he changed their lives, and this really must be stated again, that his lasting legacy on the music world as a godfather of heavy metal is solidified. I mean, Ozzy single-handedly created an entire genre of music that spawned 1 million bands. His legacy is undeniable. Lastly, we have the impact that he left on the fans, which shows an outpouring of grief, the likes of which we only saw when the Queen passed away. Ozzy was given his own funeral procession and was driven through his hometown, as the streets lined with fans throwing flowers and cheering one last time to honour the Prince of Darkness. The procession even drove past his childhood home one last time, as Sharon and his family put on a brave face for all and raised the V hand signature for him for one last time, synonymous to what he used on stage and of course on the Volume 4 front cover. What happened next was highly unusual, as all the subgenres stood in solidarity for some time and paid their respects to the man. This would be reflected in the music charts as once again Black Sabbath and Ozzy climbed the list, and at one point 8 out of 10 songs from the top 10 list were filled with either Black Sabbath or Ozzy Osbourne tunes. It was fucking insane, and a moment that really did restore my faith in humanity to see it. For example, when any other musician passes away, you might see 1 or 2 of their songs hit the charts once again. 3 if you're lucky. But 8 goddamn songs? You deserve it, Ozzy, for what you have done. And finally, we have arrived at the end of a very, very long episode. Now, I have taken my time writing this one, carefully checking all the stories to the best of my abilities, and I'm sure I'm going to be wrong on some of the things, so be kind in the comment sections. This is my ode to Ozzy Osbourne, a crazy son of a bitch with some of the wildest stories in rock and roll that you will ever hear, and one that I had hoped to document before his passing. So, if you are a long-time fan, I feel your pain. Play his music loud, and play it proud. If you are new to Black Sabbath or Ozzy Osbourne, then we welcome you and we want you to enjoy his music. And now I want to go off script here for a moment and say, Ozzy, thank you so much for the music that you gave to me. It really did impact the taste that I had moving forward. I'm going to sign off this episode with a quote from Ozzy's son Jack here, who I think summed it up perfectly. This was Jack's first social media post after his father passed away. I haven't really wanted to post anything since the passing of my father. My heart has hurt too much. I'm going to keep this short because he certainly hated long rambling speeches. He was so many things to so many people. But I was so lucky and blessed to be a part of a very small group that got to call him Dad. My heart is full of so much sadness and sorrow, but also so much love and gratitude. I got 14,501 days with that man, and I know that is such a blessing. I think this quote best describes my father. Hunter S. Thompson once said, "Life should not be a journey to the grave with the intention of arriving safely in a pretty well-preserved body, but rather to skid in on the broadside of a cloud of smoke, thoroughly used up, totally worn out, and loudly proclaiming, 'Wow, what a ride.' That was my dad and how he lived. And he lived his life fully. I love you, Dad." If you've enjoyed this content, make sure to smash that like button, subscribe to us, and stay notified for future music related content because it keeps our manager happy at the end of the day. We are also on Discord, Instagram, Facebook, and all those other social platforms if you want to check us out. As always, people, you have a great day and stay spicy.